Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Monday. My name is Jesse Greer and I'm the Vice President of Multifamily and Investments at Avison Young. And today I have a very special guest with me, Chris Pingree. Chris, how you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me today.
No problem.
In fact, Chris is the Building and Safety Manager here at the City of Reno in the Community Development and Building Department. And I tell you what, we got some exciting stuff to discuss today that's really informative due to the fact that we also, are talking to other agencies, and it's like a multi-agency effect that we have going on here, But before we dive into that, Chris, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and this department.
Of course. So, like we talked about, I am the Building and Safety Manager for the City of Reno, and under the CD umbrella, Community Development, I oversee our building plan review, building inspection, and our permit technicians in the building department here at the City of Reno. So I basically we own the process of coming in and getting a permit for anything being built within the confines of the City of Reno, outlined from Washoe County into Sparks. I've been here almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in July. I relocated from Southern Nevada. Some people say that's a good thing, some bad, right? I mean, so we do love being here. I moved my wife and my kids, my whole family here about July of 2015. I came here from the Clark County Building Department. I was with them for 10 years, doing pretty much the same thing in an inspection supervisory role, and was brought here as the Assistant Building and Safety Manager in 2015, and for the last 2 years I've been in the manager role. We oversee the day-to-day operations of basically all permit intake, the day-to-day inspections, the plan review, everything behind the scenes when you come in to apply for a building permit, and magic at the end, we spit it out at the end of the process.
That's fantastic. And when you look at the depth of knowledge that Chris brings to this experience right here to this table, I mean, you talk about Las Vegas if you like it or not. The fact of the matter is that you were down in Las Vegas with a tremendous amount of building, a tremendous amount of just real world experience that you're able to bring back to this market as well and expound upon, which is fantastic.
I spent, right out of high school, went through a carpenter's apprenticeship and worked on Las Vegas Boulevard for almost 10 years as a carpenter foreman, general foreman, moving my way up through that and realized that I was time to go back to school and get myself out of that trade. And so in that transition, I went to work for Clark County, and I was the supervisor. Basically, I spent all of my time on Las Vegas Boulevard on all of the high rises that we had there, which was one of the reasons which brought me here, was the need for future building. And it has been a while since we've built any substantially tall, high-rise capable buildings.
Yeah.
So it was a perfect fit, and I haven't looked in the rearview mirror since, so it's been a good gig.
So what I like about this, Chris, is you not only have the government sector experience, but you have the boots on the ground. I mean, swinging a hammer, working your way up, and being actually at the development, understanding what it takes to get through the process that you're trying to go through on the planning side here, right, or the building department side.
It's 100% correct. I always call myself the advocate or the bridge between the private sector and the public sector on building a safe environment.
Which is fantastic. So really the crux of this conversation today is it's because it's a multi-series video, right? And basically we're going to talk to different city officials in regards to this one topic that I think is really starting to create some unease with a lot of the owners in more so the midtown or infill development areas, right? And this is the issue of unit count. Now, it might not seem that big, but when you look at, for example, the planning department, right, your department, when you look at the Washoe County Assessor, sometimes you might have a multifamily that might be 10 units in one, 8 units in another, and 10 in another. I mean, it varies.
That's correct.
And it can be kind of frustrating. And it's one of those things where I think, right now we're at the precipice of yourself and other agencies working together for the benefit of the public, trying to remedy this problem, which is fantastic.
Agreed.
So really when it comes down to this, you're kind of the tip of the spear, right, when it comes to identifying these types of properties. And maybe you can give us a little bit of an example of how a multifamily might be a 10 unit in the Assessor, but an 8 unit here.
Very well. Historically through our processes, we've kind of ebbed and flowed of being as thorough as possible between the units, the developments, and the departments we have within the city.
Yeah.
We work hand in hand. Most people come in for a business license, so to say.
Sure.
And they'll come in for a business license to apply for a business license on an 8-unit apartment complex. And business license will flag it saying, okay, building, will you do a review on that? And we do a cursory review. Fire does a review just to make sure nothing has changed
Yeah.
in over the years. Say it's depending on the age of the property. And so when we get that cursory review, we'll go back historically to see what was there before and what records we have. And say the applicant is coming in for an 8-unit apartment complex, we might have it as a 6-unit apartment complex with a laundry room and a manager's suite that were built in with them as well.
Okay.
And so the original planning and zoning for that development only allowed 6 units due to parking, due to geographical zoning, just all depends. There's multiple ways that it could have been only approved to be a 6-unit apartment with a manager's suite and a laundry room.
So what you're saying then is back in whatever time it was built and whatever zoning regulation it might have fell in at that time, because it constantly ebbs and flows, right? Zoning and requirements. That at that time, a manager's unit wasn't classified as an actual unit.
Correct.
Nor was a laundry unit.
Correct.
Okay. But as time goes on and as the demand for multifamily proceeds to, move forward, people might convert these into an actual unit or convert a laundry room to an actual unit without going through the proper procedures.
Correct.
Okay.
And a lot of the times, as times did change, property management companies took over these properties.
Okay.
Where at one point they were owned by an individual who was that manager in those units.
I
So
see.
where they were building that as an investment, they were going to live there, they were going to caretake. It was basically a caretaker's unit for all of those.
Yeah.
Where we didn't have as many management firms out there doing multiple properties at one time.
That makes sense.
So they would have all the facilities there. It was, they offered these services that were not only your apartment unit, but you had a laundry service and you had a manager's unit there for your beck and call, basically, if
Yep.
something were to go wrong. And so as things changed and property management companies came about and took over multiple properties, we would convert those units. They would take the laundry units out and convert that to a apartment unit just like the neighbors.
You wouldn't even tell. Right?
Couldn't even tell from the outside.
It was
Same.
only the business license that really gave it away versus maybe
Correct.
what the assessor counted, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And which there's multiple facets to why and how that comes into play in our world of if we had 4 separate laundry units and there were 2 separate washing machines, they were being charged fixture units through our sewer department on those as well.
Okay.
And so there's multiple facets when you go to convert that, where most of the property owners didn't know it would have worked to their advantage by getting the credits for those sewer units brought back into the system and converting that. But it goes back to what was allowed in that land use. So
Okay.
if we only had 6 parking spaces, we could only have those 6 units. And through the planning environment, different areas of town have different requirements,
Yeah.
right? Different restrictions of how vertical you can go with construction, how many units you can put on an acre, everything changes. So as the times have changed and the zoning has changed, these properties might have got left in the dust and nobody was there to change it at the time and they just kind of rolled through the process.
And just because it was managed like that and left like that doesn't mean it's right. In other words, grandfathering isn't the excuse that can be used,
Right.
Which is unfortunate with some owners because what you find is that people come into this market, they like Midtown, it's a hot market right now, but that's really, I think, where the crux of this issue is coming from.
Correct.
Right? So you have to be conscientious on what is the business license for the property, how many units is that showing, what is the assessor showing, and what does zoning qualify you for, right? And we already discussed in great detail the zoning aspect of it, and that's why we're in the building department aspect of it now. So we talked about managers units, we talked about laundry rooms, but sometimes people just might have expanded, right? They might have added on without even going to the building department
Very
or
much so.
to any other agency for that matter.
Correct.
And the unfortunate part is it's going to be the responsibility of the new owner or the existing owner. Just because, it happened previous to you doesn't mean it's right. Right? But here's the beauty of where we're at right now, okay? When you look at the different agencies that we're working with, they're not anti-public, they're not anti-owner. In fact, what's amazing that I found in talking with Chris beforehand, which is why I'm really excited to be here now, is they want to work with the public. They want to try to rectify the issue to the best of their ability within code that allows them to. And what that means is if you have an issue with your property, come to Chris, come to Angela. Don't feel like if you are out of zoning or if you're not within the building permit, that if you go here, you're automatically going to get tagged and you're automatically going to get, in other words, what would typically happen?
Well, so the enforcement aspect of this job I mean, we're all so busy.
Yes.
I'll throw out the drop-in with CD meeting while we have a minute to talk about that too.
Absolutely.
Every Monday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. here at City Hall on the 6th floor in our large conference room, we offer a service to the general public. Anybody with an idea, a project in mind that they want to bounce some ideas off of the department managers of myself in building, planning, engineering, health, fire, and I think I'm missing one more, but I think that's the crux of the 5.
So imagine having 5, possibly 6 building heads all at a table together, being able to answer any question you might have. That's huge right there. That's a free public service.
It is a free public service, and it is open to anyone. It's first come, first served. We sign in at the counter on the 6th floor, and we will hear it. No matter how many people show up, we'll cut the time down. We leave an hour open. And then if you have a specific project in mind, we do offer a service continuing on, which are pre-submittal meetings. Basically, you will reach out. We have a link. I'll make sure that I get that to Jesse to make sure we can get that posted.
Absolutely. That'll be on the video.
You can apply for you fill out a form and send it in, and we will pencil you in for a 45-minute window, either at the 9 o'clock or the 9:45 hour, and we just book those out throughout the Mondays, and we leave that Monday morning until just 11:30 a.m. We do nothing but answer questions on possible developments, questions you have, possibilities that you want to do to your properties, or things you've done in the past. And those things, you come to us with those, and those are all, you come confidentially. It's one person at a time in the room with that group of managers, and we'll give you our best feedback on how we can move forward with your project. Whether we can, whether we can't. Sometimes we have to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
Sometimes buildings don't meet minimum planning. They don't meet minimum building code. But we will give you the remedies on how we can get there. So please take advantage of that process, and then I'll go back into the enforcement that we originally started with. With code enforcement, they are now moved into a different division, but we still work hand in hand with them every day. So they're part of neighborhood services now. And they have a great team and a great leadership that we have worked really hard to establish a great relationship on complaints. Typical complaints come in through our Reno direct line, and then they're dispersed to the managers that have involvement in them. And so we work hand in hand on any of the complaints that go out for especially this type of application of units, and business license can trigger these as well, like we talked about.
Okay.
But we send, typically, after we receive a complaint, we will involve code enforcement to go out and just verify what we have out there. And if it's code enforcement that goes out, they will be the ones that initiate a code case, basically saying, you know what, they reported there's 6 units in there and they're actually 8. They'll go out and do a visual to verify whether or not there's 6 or 8, and if they can even tell if there is or not. And if they can't tell, the case gets closed. If they need to do more exploratory, they'll reach out to the owner. We have a whole process in place of how we would notify that. In order to prevent that, if we can come in early enough to ask the managers of the different departments a path moving forward, we'd be more than happy to do that on any one case, no matter how large or small.
So it sounds like there's really 2 different ways that something like this would be brought up, right? The first would be if you make your neighbors mad. Right, if you make someone mad and they decide to, basically submit an issue pertaining to the number of units versus the residents that are there, right? And it might be with parking, it might be with your tenant base and whoever it might be. Or the other is, you think you might have an issue and you come to the city. And like Chris said, I mean, it's not going to be one of those things where all of a sudden you're in trouble. The goal for the city, just like we discussed with Angela, is to help the owner, right? To try to find a path to make sure that this is legally right. Now, unfortunately, you might not always get a yes, and unfortunately, there might not be a path to yes, but I think at least it gets you in the right direction of understanding what you need to do, right? Because ultimately, if you decide to sell this property one day, or maybe refinance a property, this could become an issue, and it's something that needs to be rectified. So, from the point that, let's say, someone is notified, right? We'll take the route of someone's getting notified, and they're actually having an inspector go out. Walk me through the process of what typically happens if the business license is for 6 units, but it's an 8 unit. Then what happens next?
So basically, we'll notify them to come in and schedule an appointment with us, to bring them into the office, to talk to the owner, to find out where we want to go. What's our end goal? Do we want to go 8 units? Do we want to revert it back to 6? We can go back to the way it was. they always have the option to go back to what it was originally permitted for. And I guess that's the main point I want to drive home is what was the building originally permitted for? Is it,
Yeah.
was it multi-use? Was it 6 units? Was it 8 units with a restaurant? You just never know what it was originally permitted for. And so many things have evolved over the years.
Interesting.
That things change and go completely different roads. And we've got some motels that are being used as apartments as motels. And
We're seeing a lot of that too.
And
There's some examples that you came across where a property was tagged and there was really no way to work with the owner to make that an actual unit. And I have a feeling this is more safety related.
So yes, we've had many instances with basements. So,
Okay.
We've got, especially in the midtown area, of course, we've got homes that have built all the way from the 20s to the 40s, 50s, 60s, all throughout. And we had a lot of those homes were built with basements that were unfinished basements. And by building code, unfinished means non-habitable.
Okay.
So basically, you can have a basement for all of your furnaces, you could have a large game room, you could have anything you want in there, but you cannot have a bedroom.
Okay, so the defining factor of habitable versus non-habitable is
Basically what you're using it for. It all triggers use in the building code. So
Okay.
if you have a bedroom requires a whole laundry list of things for means of egress, smoke detection, all kinds of life safety implementations are accrued onto bedrooms compared to the rest of the house.
And one example that Chris gave earlier that I think is really important to think about is when you look at these basements and safety, right, is let's say there's a fire down there. How is the fire department going to be able to enter into that basement if they can't go through the front door? And I think that's one of the issues that you came across lately.
Yeah, and we've had multiple issues with this, but we also had a fire, not too long ago that we had 2 young boys that died in a fire in a basement.
Yeah.
And so it hits really close to home with everybody in the community to make sure that we do our job to protect not only the firefighters, protect the property owners, the lessees, whoever is renting that house
Absolutely.
for that matter, and to give them the opportunity just to meet the minimum codes that we require. You don't think about a firefighter with an oxygen tank. That's why we require 5.7 square feet for an egress window. For your bedroom window, it's got to be big enough for a firefighter to climb out. And
With the
why
tank
they
and all, right?
That's why they
Yeah.
design the size the way
Yeah.
it is. And we have a specific height that, of that windowsill that has to be met in order for a child to get out of that window in the event of a fire. So not only do we have to worry about the firefighters coming in, but people getting out.
So we talked about some units, which just makes sense. I mean, you shouldn't have it as a unit that way, and for safety reasons, right? Now let's talk about those examples where you wouldn't even known that this 8 unit was a 6 unit because the manager's unit was converted or the laundry room was converted, right? Let's say, for example, there's not a path for those individuals, then what happens?
We've recently come in contact with a couple of these, which
Okay.
it becomes a tricky situation. Like our goal is to find a way for you to get there.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we can't. Sometimes, zoning doesn't allow 8 units where it needs to be 6.
For density purposes or parking purposes.
Parking purposes. And we now have, as Angela addressed, the new planning code coming through. We
Yes.
have addressed a lot of these issues, but it's not perfect, right? The answer's not always yes. So in these applications, we have the option to either go back to what we have on record and reconvert that back to a 6 unit with the manager's office and the laundry room.
Okay.
We always have that option to go back. But most people buying their investment, they want those 8 units that are there. And
It's for cash flow, right? It's all about valuation at that point.
So we will, at that point, decide whether we can do, what we can do in a path moving forward as far as, are we going to give an administrative decision on how far you can go, if we can add a minor deviation to another unit? Is there anything in the future for a planning and zoning change that can help us get there? What are the parameters and how can we move forward to get that to where we can make those units legal? Sometimes
Yeah.
we can't.
Yep, yep. And that's the tough part. So let's say in that example, is the owner still able to use those units as, in other words, can they still have tenants in those units, or are they just tagged and they cannot be used anymore?
So we rarely go out and close down units. We don't
Okay.
remove occupancy. The worst case scenario, it's harder in residences than it is commercial buildings, right?
Okay.
So once we know about a bedroom that is not a safe place to live, we're gonna proceed with action to make it safe.
Absolutely.
And if we can't get to that, then we will go back to a notice of violation, a stop work, or a citation at that point to address the issue that we have.
Okay.
And that either gives the property owner the path moving forward of how we can permit this. We can come in and we can actually make those units livable.
Yep.
And if we can get there, we can. And the process in place for that is pretty smooth. But commercial buildings, including apartments, all require a general contractor license in the state of Nevada to do that work.
Okay.
So we go back in and if we come back in and we find a unit that was illegally converted and we get a general contractor to come in and apply for an application, we go out and make sure what's there is safe. Make sure it was built to the standards that we required.
For today's code.
And at the time it was usually
Okay.
built. We wouldn't require the new building to be above and beyond what was already there. We just have to make sure that it meets the minimum safety requirements that we're okay with.
Got it.
We would never ask you to bring it back to current standards. It's brought back to what it was built at.
Okay.
Those are on the retroactive type. Anytime that if we can come back later and permit it and make it legal, we'll do so. If we can't, then we proceed down that road of notices of violation and we'll bring it back to what it was originally permitted.
Got it. And if that doesn't happen, then a notice goes on title, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's the worst case scenario, right? But like I said, they're always willing to try to find a solution,
Right.
And let's say the owner doesn't want to cooperate, then unfortunately that's where it would go.
Correct. Correct.
Now let's talk about the option of, let's say those two units are in a APN that has the density for them, they were just never permitted, right? There's a couple different things in working with different agencies that you have to abide by to get those back up to speed, in addition to the building department. I think when you and I chatted last, it was sewer and RTC. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So anytime you come to pull a permit at the city of Reno, we have a regional partnership with, say, the Regional Transportation Commission, and we do the RTC fees, which encompass all of our roads, all of our infrastructure, that anytime you do work, you will be hit with that fee. So
Okay.
that fee, depending on the type of use, the type of building, is reflected on their website, basically out of their fee schedule. That is changed constantly. But we administer that fee for the RTC.
Okay.
So basically, we get that fee, we take care of that up front, and then they take it from the back. That way you don't have to go back to the RTC every time that you want to, if you're doing a project. It's kind of a one-stop shop.
It's streamlined for one agency, which is fantastic.
Correct.
Yeah.
And with the ones we do have control of, RTC was great to partner with us and able to do that, but we don't set those fees, right? So sometimes we're the messenger, right? And
Just the collector.
just the collector. And so our sewer fixtures, which they're pretty close to mirroring one another for the RTC fees and the sewer fixture units,
Mhm.
Anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 per connection.
Okay,
for
so that'd be
our
per
residents.
unit in essence.
Per unit, per
Okay.
unit. So, and those fees, depending on which facility you feed into, they change as well, and they're also available on our website as well.
Okay.
And different commercial applications have different fees for sewer fixture units. But for every one of, if we had that 6-unit complex that we only build for 6 units of sewer, plus your laundry room, where does that leave those extra 2 units that not only are we're not including for our capacity measures, but for maintenance of the facilities and the infrastructure that's already in place?
Yeah.
So we want those records to be correct to make sure that that sewer main is big enough, for example, or the water main is big enough. Make sure the utilities that are provided were adequate for the project that we have at hand.
So just to recap real quick on that as well, so not only, should you be mindful of sewer fees because of the addition of the 2 units being correct in the system, but you might need to also look at your connection main, right? So there might be a chance where it would have to be expanded, is what you're
Correct.
saying? Okay.
So out of one of the 18 codes that we do use, I mean, we have the plumbing code, we enforce 2 different plumbing codes, and you can go either route depending on the size of the building. Your sewer to the main is typically a 4-inch sewer.
Mhm.
You go back in history, a 3-bedroom house can go on a 3-inch sewer, but once you go to a 4th bedroom, you can no longer use a 3-inch sewer. It's got to be upsized.
Okay.
And that is the sewer lateral, which ties into the sewer main in the street.
Yeah.
And so if we increase the units and increase the actual fixture units, which would be the toilets and showers and
Mm-hmm.
lavatories, that would increase the pipe size that would need to leave that your building drain that would go into your sewer main. And if we don't have the proper size, you know what can happen from there, right?
Infrastructure, absolutely. The increase in infrastructure needs. So the sewer fees, RTC fees, and then going back to the sewer fees, maybe having to expand the lines, you know, could be options to get you where you need to be with your property going back to an 8-unit. It has to do with so many different factors, and why it's so important to understand that you do have these agencies working for you, and they are working for you. And granted, to Chris's point, it might not always be yes, but there'll be a path to trying to get to yes.
Correct.
You know, which is fantastic. Chris, I know we covered quite a bit today, and I really appreciate your time. If anyone has any additional questions, how do they get a hold of your department, and what's the best way to proceed with that?
You always have the options that we talked about with the drop-in with CD. My information is on our website. We also have a general phone number that we pride ourselves on making sure those phone calls are returned within 24 hours. My email and my phone number are on our website, and so are all of these other resources on how to get a hold of somebody. And our CD department, community development, has reached out, and everybody has a desk phone, everybody has an office phone. We have general call numbers. Or you can just shoot me an email, and my information is obviously posted, and you can feel free to share that.
We'll put that on the video as well.
And I'll give Jesse a few of other email addresses that you can feel free to shoot and get a direct conduit to somebody here in the community development department.
Fantastic. So contrary to popular belief, they are open to the public, and they do want to help.
Correct.
Chris, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thank you, you too.